where subsection 95A comes in. That's why I put it in reversion. But again, if one doesn't know the history, one would have a tendency to think that somebody can just claim to be the creditor instead of the debtor, and therefore, you know, have a claim on this estate. Well, no, it's not like that. Because you got to name the heir. You got to name the heir. It can't be just heir or beneficiary or, you know, creditor. It must be specifically named. If being African American, i.e. Moorish American, you're not an heir. Now, and this is why it's important to understand what Obama was saying when he went to Egypt and he exposed that the American Constitution comes from Muslim law. And also when Michelle went to the Alhambra. And also what George Washington was talking about when he was talking about their inability to keep up with the taxes, etc. In his writing to the Sultan. And so the world's longest running treaty is what? Between the Moroccan Empire and the United States. And that's the foundation of your contemporary politics right there. So the Moors, or the descendants of the Moroccan Empire, have been branded black by the Europeans to block them from being descendable. Yet all this information is public record. And yet, long as they claim to be black or something else, in law they're not descendable. And so by default, the Europeans controlling and administrating their estate. And this is where the Sister Q v. Trust Act comes in. And this is where the operative 14th Amendment has its operation. That's what it has its functional operation. And again, like I said, once you understand these keys or these reference points, pretty much most questions that people would have about the operations of the administrative economics here is very, very clear. And you wouldn't get caught in the gray area. And pretty much anything they present to you, you could analyze it right out. And it's not unlike that once you understand what legal paper is, I don't care how many times they tell you that 8 by 10 is legal paper. You know, they can say it all day long, but you know better. And not just because you know better, you can go on their computer and list up, you know, view the paper. And you can show up legal, and it'll be 8.5 by 14. Well, yet they'll say that that ain't legal. And then logically, a person who believes them indicates that that person's naive. You know, for them to even debate it, you know, they're non-debatable. And people will debate the non-debatable based on their so-called beliefs. Or any other questions or statements? All right, so when we're dealing with the restoration of the estate, one of the first things that we're doing, we're identifying ourselves properly, or being ourselves, and telling the world that we're aware. Now, in estate law, isn't it the rule that when the heir of an estate shows what's called maturity and competence, that the estate must be released? Now you understand where the Pope is saying that they're in breach of trust. So if they're in breach of trust, that means you can use any process that they present to you. The process, even if it's valid, they're not going to honor it because they're in breach of trust. Therefore, they must be what? Removed. Therefore, Manchurian families, i.e. assassins. And that's some influence, isn't it? Now, part of the agreement is this. They still have their toys in place, and they have advanced weaponry and a lot of stuff that's not revealed, and they still have a tendency to remove people that are a threat to the system. Well, this is what the general commitment is. The general commitment is take one, because we know you can, lose 10.
Yes.
Take 10, lose 20, plus that 2, and let it accelerate like that. So this is why you see a lot of things, or a lot of truths being told now by Europeans that years ago they would not even touch. They wouldn't get near admitting any of this information. Now, sis, as far as yourself, you know, just like you're not aware about some of these things, it will become common knowledge to you, whereas if we go to the bathroom and we tell you to get up there behind the rostrum and just take off, and you continue to speak on this subject matter thoroughly and with competence. That's what must take place. In other words, you must get out of a third-person perspective, get into first person, not because I said so, but because when you begin to recognize it's your birthright, your whole view of this whole platform will be totally different than it is right now with a lack of consciousness. See, right now, when people don't know the history and the tie, it's somebody else's information. When you find out it's your birthright, you will become just as dedicated as to some people that you may be looking at, that just like you come here with him and you're interested, which is why you're here, but still you may be looking at this information that he's into and you're curious or you're with him type thing, you know what I mean? And you're trying to learn a few things, but you're not necessarily like down with it.
Yeah,
but you find out...
It's not like... I'm interested 100%. It's just, I feel like it's not my journey right now. I'm doing my own research spiritually.
What you should be doing.
Yeah, I'm in some
What you should be doing.
Yeah, but now, I'm 100% interested in it.
Yeah, but no, listen to what I'm saying. This is what I mean by it. I don't mean it that you're not interested. I don't mean it that way. I mean it this way. When it dawns on you, when you come with the information, when it gets within you to the point that it's first person, the value of it will accelerate so strong and so quickly that you would be spending every waking hour to correct your concepts and to get it correct. Because you, not just because it's morally and ethically correct, because you will see things that otherwise you would not see. Meaning that you would see deadline operations, which means it's sort of like, when you really get this, you'll understand how people don't know they're standing at the edge of a political cliff. And that their preoccupation with a lot of other things is a waste of time. And then your energy will be directed more to restoration of the birthright. And the more you looked at it, the more you will recognize, damn, I mean, I knew there was vampires, but they're really vampires type thing. You understand what I'm saying to you? And you would recognize how irresponsible as a people collectively we are and have been, many of whom don't know that they're being irresponsible. They don't know how dire the situation is. They don't know that while they're taking their time trying to figure this stuff out, plots are being made to exterminate them to stop them from finding out. In other words, the heirs are waking up, they're trying to kill the heirs off. And so people who may not even be interested and don't even know, they're plotting to kill them. And they're busy maybe doing some JOB. Not that they shouldn't. In other words, not being aware of what's really going on in the real world, they're sort of like not knowing they're walking through a minefield. Because they're busy doing their thing because it appears normal, and not knowing people are plotting to kill them. Because those who know what's taking place, knowing that they're getting ready to get thrown out of power. And the platforms upon which their instruments have operated are being dismantled as we speak. So therefore, people who don't really understand this are confidently going about their lives in areas that they don't even know is going to be terminated. Which means a lot of stuff that they're investing their time and energy in is really a waste of time. This is back to them buying time. You get the point?
Yeah, I get it.
So it's not just the UCCs, is what it really represents. It's a diversion. In other words, it's a treadmill. It doesn't mean that the processors don't say it's supposed to do this. I'm not saying that. Oh, I know what it says. But as soon as you win, you know, it's like a casino. As soon as you win, and the wheel, you know, that roulette thing, it goes, and then it goes, oh man, I got it. And then it goes, click, just drops in the other one. Keeps going all the time. And this is what it pretty much is. So people are investing their energy and time into political and economic ventures that they don't know are designed not to work, but it also is designed to keep them busy running after it. It is not unlike, you know, like, how do you get a donkey to carry a ton of carrots on his back while he's hungry, by dangling a carrot on a stick in front of his face? When he was smart, he'd stop, sit down, let you walk, and eat the carrots that got on. This is sort of like the same thing. Until the people really get what birthright theft is, they cannot be dedicated to the movement of the restoration of their estate, because they don't know they have an estate. They don't even know it's at the center of world politics. They think it's an opinion or a belief system. So it's not that they're not interested. Do you understand that? They don't know the brevity of this thing because it's never been really explained to them. The information has never been presented for them to look at it and to look at the component parts. So if you, like as an example, if you talk to many of our people, community leaders, imams, reverends, rabbis, blah, 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 and talk about racism, a lot of them can give you a deep, long, spirited conversation, oration, etc., right? Ask them about sanctum policies, and most of them don't even know what you're talking about. And that's what's really happening, not the racism. Do you get the point? Meaning that the true root of what these people are suffering from, 90% of people don't even, you can put it in their face and they wouldn't even know this is what protects the system. Because they don't know what the hell they're talking about. They're talking like little rats who've been trained to make an argument that's really designed to put them on a treadmill. They think that they're talking the issue. They're not talking the issue. They're on a treadmill, which means they're buying time. That's why they set up the platform. You see the point? And so when you look at the Pope's letter, again, which I know you're all familiar with, he's telling you bluntly in that short letter a synopsis of the history, the bonds, who the bonds are against, and the fundamental platform upon which it operates, and the distinction between the imposters who are really a private for-profit corporation pretending to be the legitimate government. And he's the Don. In other words, he's the boss of the whole thing. But those who know real world politics know he's under pressure too. It's because the game's up. Now meanwhile, the pawns who've been in the game ain't woke up that the game's over. They're still thinking in a pawn mentality, meaning they're still out there getting sacrificed when the game's over. This is what's happening to us. And this is where my passion comes in, trying to make sure that people have a background so that they don't get taken by people on our side who keeps taking advantage of them with all these processes that they know damn well ain't gonna work. But meanwhile, they're extracting their energy, you know, at this time. You know what I mean? While the game is still going on. In other words, they're stealing the people's energy. Even though Judas is misrepresented, you can call it the Judas factor. But a person who doesn't understand the history, you know, may have a tendency to get caught up in the emotions of who they like and who they don't like, and not measure people by principles. And therefore not recognizing when you're dealing with a co-cooperative. Because they say, you know, things that are peer friendly. You know, the African man of the blackness is God. Oh, why don't you make your sandwiches while you're marching? You know, like they be making all those kind of statements. It sound good. Not that it's true or not. The deal with it is, well, if you God, why are you all marching and praying? Why you're scared as European? If you God, fix this thing. You know, why talk about marching and praying? You know, there was so many things that we've been trained to say are so contradictory, and we need to be honest and look at things for what they really are, and recognize that by design and by control factors engineering, people got us on these treadmills of emotional statements without substance. And again, and this is redundant, you understand what I mean when I say they're buying time. Because when we participate in these programs, you know, it ain't like, you know, like, if you have to go to the corner store to buy a loaf of bread, why do you gotta keep going back all year and then you start a new path and you ain't got the loaf of bread yet? And then when you see, you got to walk around this stuff here, but then you go up here to where the Amtrak station is, over there and stuff like that. And then you got to file these papers, and then you got to walk across the street if they're open, and then get a apostille here, and then you got to come back down here to the sandwich shop. You understand what I'm saying? Wait 3 months. You understand what I'm saying? And then you're gonna start this another process, and then you can file this thing. And then you got to go to Trenton, New Jersey, and then you got an apostille over here. And you gotta go with this brother here and give him 1,500, you understand what I'm saying? And then you're gonna get a hold of this count, and then you gotta go re-authenticate the birth certificate and all that stuff. And you've been doing this for 2 or 3 years. At what point you don't understand you're on a treadmill? Do you understand? Because anything that's legitimate, it works when you start the process. If you tell me to go turn the light on or the air conditioner on, I don't have to be familiar with it. All I got to do is go over there. Well, see that switch over there? The one at the top near that canister in red? You take that switch, take your finger, and you push it up like that. Do you need a apostille? No, you push the switch up like that.
Is that a hit?
And air conditioner, come on.
Is that a hit? You want the air conditioner back on?
Yeah. Well,
the city.
But ain't that the truth?
The city of Philadelphia threatened to suspend my license. They threatened to suspend my license April the 28th. So as soon as I put that written discovery, nothing after the 3 days I told them to respond. Nothing after that ever since. And I got pulled over, alleged pulled over in May. And he checked my driver's license and just gave it back and just left. Like you said, just automatically worked.
Because he knows why. He knows that you have right to go after his bond. What happens when you make a report on any so-called public servant against their bond? What occurs?
Treason. Treason.
Yeah, I mean, that's what they did, but that's not what occurs. What occurs is that when you start naming the person, that living person, man or woman, and you go after their bond, the city commissioner is notified by the insurance company, it's usually Wells Fargo Travelers who usually carry their bonds. And what happens is that their bond goes up. Most of them have a cover bond. If they know that you know that much, they know that they keep messing with you, you're going to file a claim against their bond. And then after a while, somebody's hit roll because they're not going to cover them. Means that the insurance company's not going to take the hit. That's what. Now, if you don't file complaints, right, they continue to screw people because they know people don't know that, right? Or they know that most people are ignorant and are passive. And we'll start having Negro rallies and marches and say, they gotta let them know we're somebody. We got peanut butter sandwiches too, and all that kind of stuff, right? Whereas the other person that understands this thing don't get caught in that stupidity. They go after their bond. And so what happens, city commissioner is notified that their cover bond, because they usually don't have individual bonds, which they should have, they have cover bonds, then the cost to that city corporate entity goes up, doesn't it?
Yes. Yes.
And then the insurance company starts saying, such and such a person, we're not going to cover them. Now that means that person is ineligible for some advanced position in the corporate entity. That means no promotions, don't it? Get more than one, then they become a liability, don't they? Yeah. When they become a liability, what usually happens?
You get bumped off.
They're usually released. So is our activity, and if you can get the people in general to get active, they will start little by little picking the leeches off by doing exactly what you did. Now, when someone else understands the concept upon which you operate, that's consciousness. That's the cure. That is collapsing the straw.
I seen a clip where you stepped in the help of the brother that was getting pulled over with
yeah, on Broad Street.
I was pulled over because of a.
How you feeling? No, you can't shake my hand. Yeah. Now, what's the problem?
Well, what happened is this cop saw that the light was out right here. He literally flashed his lights, pulled me over, told me
what was the emergency.
I have no idea. I asked him what was the emergency. I asked him what was the crime. He couldn't tell me the crime. He said, "Sir, turn off the
slow
car."
down. Wait, slow down.
Okay.
Got paper and pen?
Yes.
Who accused you of crime?
Apparently,
He won't give his name.
Who?
This
All right,
young man.
stop. Call the sheriff.
Okay.
There was the grass. Yeah, he need to make a phone call. The colonel said the marshal.
Yeah.
Delaware?
Yeah.
He just came home last night. So.
All right.
What's up with frequency? You ain't on no more?
No, because I don't have time. I got too many other things. Matter of fact, you was asking about it last night. But I'll be back.
All right. Take care, man. All right. Question.
Please. Now what I want you to lock on your phone, I'll give it to you later, but it's better that you do the legwork. Provost Marshal, all right, because all of the areas are broken into districts. The Archbishop of this particular area, all right, because their corporation comes under him.
Okay.
The Post letter to Obama, July the 4th, 2014. You have that? The Pope? Yes.
Civil order?
Pope,
I have it, yes, sir.
all right. Now, you're going to make a complaint to the Archbishop in the area. Make sure you get their names. Make sure you state for the record with witnesses that they have no bond. They have no business even being on the street.
Okay.
You know that, right?
Absolutely.
They have, the bond is their insurance to do business on our land. And now keep in mind what he says, that he don't like it. He's admitting he's a planner.
Okay.
So they're admitting with the weapon, they stop you, they got weapons. So they threaten you, all right? So now they're in violation of international law. They're going after their bonds. They're going after the captain, whoever sent them out here, all right? They're in violation of the Constitution. They're in violation of the treaty, all right? They're doing it because they know most people don't know their rights. They're operating under the coup d'etat of 1871. It's called the Act of 1871. Write that down so remind you something.
I was about to say, I'm recording.
Now, when the de facto sheriff comes in, you know, his job is to carry out the law. Their job is to violate the law. They're on different sides. Now we know that that the sheriff is compromised. However, he's obligated to that Constitution and treaty. They're not. They're obligated to corporations. And their business, this is why they carry out Christian black codes. Number one, this is where he's coming from, why he made that statement. All right. Now the Attorney General is the comptroller of alien properties, all alien properties. And so they're assuming, they're not assuming, under the hypothecation, they're trying to claim that your property is their property. And this is the basis upon which they're making their claim, where they're stopped. All right. Because the tag is registered.
Yeah, it's registered.
Yeah, to their trust.
Okay.
And this is why you deal with the Archbishop. Now, so the problem that you have that's going on right now, and this is why Pope Francis came here, is because they have like sort of like a
lightweight civil war going on with themselves.
Yeah. Receiving free citations today. Here's your deck. Have a nice day.
I'm not in the contract.
Okay, you
Take them. We'll deal with them.
Thank you.
We'll deal with them. We'll deal with them. Don't argue that. You don't argue with him. You talk to the magistrate. Just take the magistrate. That's all right. Now, keep these. You're going to make 3 copies. You still want the sheriff. You still want the sheriff here because we want to report this.
Okay.
We want to report this, and we're going to make him do his job. And understand. The only reason why they do this is because the transition is being made. They got like this lightweight civil war going on with them, and it's going to come out in the open before this year out. But China and Russia's going to help us eventually. That's why they're killing all of their bonds, because the only reason they're getting away with this crap is because of them bonds that they have against our birth certificates and marriage certificates and all this stuff. And you kind of understand it. It's sort of like their position is that they have a right under unum sanctum operations to steal everybody's sovereignty. This is what they're calling racism to fraud. It's unum sanctum policy, and this is where and why they're arrogant and why they're doing what they're doing. But it's also important, and this is back to where it's important for everybody who understands these things to recognize, like Raleigh said, help me in my mission to enforce the Constitution, because that's our covenant with the Europeans operating on our land. So you see, the Europeans are claiming to be Americans. They're not Americans, they're Europeans. Because they're still in the birthright. But they're obligated by treaty. Now this is why when Obama went to Hikuta, Egypt, he exposed that the American Constitution comes from Muslim law. Michelle went to the Alhamdulillah stronghold, and then Rahm Emanuel did the proclamation. So what's happening by probably in a month or two now, what has occurred recently, now Obama had a secret meeting with some of the Manchurian family under the White Dragon Society. These are P2 Masons. P2 Masons under the Pope. And Obama, Francis, and what he's asking for, they're asking for a little bit more finance, a little bit more time, and to devalue the Federal Reserve. They won't let them do it. Now, so within the next few months, you're going to have a collapse. And so it has to come to a head. But what's happening with them and amongst them is a lightweight civil war. So when I heard on the phone, you all say something about sovereign citizen.
That's what he kept. They did.
Who said that? He said that you were
sovereign citizens. He said, I'm tired of dealing.
Oh, so he slandered you too. Well, when they talk about sovereign citizens, they're talking about Europeans. We're people of the land. Our sovereignty is our birthright. Their sovereignty is juristic. They broke the treaty and they broke the Constitution. They have no sovereign right of claim. You know, so, and it continues. It continues like that. Now, so when you see them doing certain things, remember, they're instructed to pretend not to know the Constitution because they're anti-Constitution. So what they tried to do, and remember this also, because when I heard that, I wanted to remind you, sovereign and citizen don't go together. It's an oxymoron. You understand what I'm saying? It's an oxymoron. You're the nationals of the land. And whenever they do that, this is what they do. It's sort of like if you see somebody here and you call them a roach, that implies that you're justified to kill that roach. So they say sovereign citizen because U.S. citizens cannot how do you say, protest or reject the operations of their U.S. corporate entity. They're juristic. Whenever they're saying sovereign citizen, you're the national of the land. And that's a distinction. And what they're doing and what they're trying to do is associate any active or conscious Moors with the Europeans who are rebelling. All right, and because they're dissolving their middle class. And so what they're trying to do is merge us together as if we are associated with them to try to justify, so they can try to justify doing their Klan activity. Do you understand what I'm saying? So remember that. So whatever when they call you sovereign citizens, that's a misrepresentation, totally. All right. So you always correct them and say, don't misrepresent me. See, because what they do, they misclassify you and then try to do a color of law action for injury. You know, like you're saying, like say for instance, you're standing there, right? They'll say things like that. Oh, he's a threat, in order to justify hurting you, in order to carry out Article 1 of their Klan activities. You know, so keep that in mind. And now, when you're dealing with them, and like I said to you earlier, stay straight to the point, stay on law. Don't have any other conversation with them. Whenever you're encountering them, remember they are known criminals.
Okay.
This is why the world court, this is why they're avoiding world court. And so your claims also will be made in world court. So I want you to get their names. I want you to get the reason why you're going after the sheriff, because you're going to make him expose this stuff.
Okay.
And what I want is a full report, a full written report. Everything that was said, everything was not said. Are we clear?
Yes.
We're going to make a report to the Attorney General, Comptroller of Alien Properties, the Archbishop of this area. He's responsible for them. And you're going to make a claim in The Hague in the High Court against that person who's been operating on our land without a bond. That's a criminal act. It's a federal offense. The only reason they're getting away with it is because the Congress is corrupt. And so that's why they killed Scalia recently. You know, put a pillow over his head. That was a signal, a Masonic signal. Wow. Because he was against a lot of bullshit, and he's trying to go back to the Republic. These guys are for the democracy system. He's cool.
He's been cool.
Yeah.
Still got my keys.
Now, Scalia, who they murdered the other day, you know, they say he died of a heart attack. They killed him. Now, this is where the Civil War is going on. Some of them are trying to restore the Republic. This is who they're calling sovereign citizens. That's the Europeans here. We're the nationals. All right? So there's an association because both of us our mission is to restore the Republic. All right? The sovereign citizens' mission is to do the same. But the difference is that they're alien. They come under the Naturalization Act of 1870 that was adjusted by Ulysses Grant, whereas you are a treaty and constitution. All right? And so what they're trying to do is flip the script and put you in their position, which is birthright, in order to enforce the color of operations. Because remember, when Wilson sold the government to the Jesuits in 1913, one of the agreements is that all U.S. citizens, no U.S. citizen can contest anything done under the de facto operations of 1871. And so this is where and why that font was saying sovereign citizen. That was a signal. That's a signal they use amongst themselves.
Okay.
All right. Sort of like any gang member, because remember they are branches of the gangs of New York, and their agreement was to help murder off the indigenous people so that the Europeans could steal our land. And this has much to do with the Reconstruction, period of Reconstruction. So when they start making those misstatements like that, know that they're trying to incite. Knowing that that's what they do, don't play them. Your immediate obligation is called the supervisor and the sheriff. The supervisor, actually, they're not even supposed to be on the scene together, because these are the criminals for the corporation, and the sheriff is supposed to enforce the treaty and constitution. So they're two different venues. These are not really officers; they're private soldiers for the Jesuits. The sheriff is the only lawful officer, And when they stopped you unlawfully for revenue purposes, because they're highwaymen, they're robbers. I want you to look that up in Black's Law Dictionary. And then look at the Supreme Court cases in relationship to them. Do you have the a copy of the 13 points of stare decisis?
I could probably get it.
That we always give rights of travel?
I need that.
Yeah, I'm gonna make sure you have that. Study that. Now what you want to do, you're gonna copy these. You're gonna copy these, take the originals, and you're gonna write on a 45-degree angle. Refuse for fraud. House Joint Resolution 192, 73rd Congress. Pope Francis. All right, then you're going to do the civil orders. Then you do coup d'etat act of 1871. And you're going to have a talk to that magistrate in his chambers. Because he's a Mason anyway. You know, he's a knight, probably a Knight of Malta or a Knight of Columbus. He's one or the other. And this guy here is a planner. They do the dirty work. Okay. Which is why he said what he said. That was a signal. All right, so that's what you're going to do.
Well, that explains why so many cars showed up.
Now you do that before 72 hours.
Okay.
All right, because they're going on the stock market. You know, and you put a threat, duress, and coercion on it, etc. But you also want to send a copy of them to the Archbishop too. All right, and to the Attorney General. All right, with a complaint, and I'll help you draft a complaint if you don't have it. All right, or you can see the sheriff. You know, but make a full report. All right, now are they under arrest?
No, we're all here voluntarily.
Oh, yeah. All right. All right. How about anybody else? Anybody giving up anything?
You can ask if they have it.
All right.
Can you get that card number?
Were you on your way to class?
We were leaving out to
Did you get any tags? Any tag numbers?
No. All I got was the car number and the names and badge numbers.
Sure.
They said he's AWOL on Saturdays. AWOL on Saturday and Sunday. You can make the report Monday and ain't no big deal.
Oh, all right. All right.
All right. All right.
No,
well, we were in the meeting. Called the sheriff.
Right. Yeah.
And that's what it made me think, because you, like you said, make him do his job, since we know that he's really not operating under that, but since he's claiming or holding that title, you said make him do his job. Yeah. So now you're making him come out, and that's making him upset, and now I can see how that starts making everybody else under him cause problems. But did he ever come out? No. And if he doesn't, then now y'all think I don't lean on him now, right?
Of course, you already know what's going to happen.
Right.
You know, then we asked them commercial mercenaries, you know, for their bond.
And they start hiding?
Yeah, they start hiding their nameplates, turning to the side, others wouldn't get out the cars.
And then send the unconscious Moor to do the talking and let him take the hit.
Right, yeah.
Right. And then there was the guy who was a lieutenant or something like that, or sergeant, whoever it was, to talk to him. We said, and I said, sorry, because the Manchurian families are here, they'll be helping us anyway. You know, and then I said, is he under arrest? Well, no. Well, get in your car, there we go. You know what I'm saying? And if we had come out there, they would have took him and took the car too.
Exactly. For a blown light.
Really?
But it's understanding is, once you understand what's up and you indicate that you comprehend, they change up. But you can't be operating on emotion.
Are you going to kidnap me?
Well,
Are you going to kidnap me?
we're going to go after their bonds. But again, we need the people to be conscious so that they don't become dependent, meaning they keep putting the burden on it, on, you know, single units of people who are doing work, because they should be doing it in all their community operations with all their so-called organized groups. Their leader guys and leader girls should be dealing with this stuff because that's the source of their problem. And they know it is. You know what I mean? They've been playing with them. They've been playing with them, excuse me, y'all. They've been playing with them, knowing better, and knowing that they're being taken advantage of. Excuse me, let me get rid of this sound here.
Regards to land patents through the Borough Land Management.
Yeah.
And getting your, getting the survey done, a certified copy of your warranty deed, you submit all that to the BLM, and then in return, the president's supposed to sign off on it to where you only get a land patent through being an heir or a signee. So back when those times when the United States purchased all the land,
which could not be done, but again, continue.
Right.
Yeah.
But they couldn't do it, but they did anyway. But then what they were doing, they were selling that, a long time ago, they would say you get an acre of land for $1.25 or 60 acres for $1.
And this is what they were doing. Remember all the operations that they were doing for under the doctrine of discovery, where they could give the land to Europeans, taking it from us. So when you're looking at those processes, they were set up mainly for Europeans, or settlers, as they call them. You know what I mean? And this is also where, with the doctrine of discovery, which was being used to actually steal the land from us, which has been done then and is being done now. Right. But again, a lot of the processes that on the surface appear legitimate were really designed for Europeans, not for us. You understand? And we have to be aware of that. So you're an heir, you must claim the land. And it comes from your counsel, not them. You don't ask them for permission, you simply tell them. You put them on notice. And this is back to even where the Pope is mentioning the Constitution, the obligations, and all treaties enforced, etc. This stuff was already settled before you even were born. It's been breached. That's what's happening. When you're talking about the ordinance of 1787, etc., what you see is all these things have been breached. You don't have to reestablish anything yet to establish yourself. Reestablish being yourself, which you have not been yourself, which is the foundation upon which they've used to disinherit you. This is where the wardship tenures come in, where the straw has its political function in society. And with the straw, you're talking about the 14th Amendment classification or misclassification of Moorish Americans as African Americans to back the U.S. government debt after the Civil War. I mean, bluntly, the Pope is telling you this. And again, like I say, once you understand these keys, pretty much the rest of it becomes obvious. And when you look at the numbers of people who have been struggling to liberate themselves, etc., and being, neglected and still abused, it is clear that it is no such thing as them not knowing that what they're doing is violating the people. What they're doing is violating the people who are half asleep, don't understand that they already know what the hell they're doing. They already know that they're bound by Constitution and treaty. They already know that they're covenant contracts to do business at Morocco, and they create all these spurious false arguments and diversions for people to discuss that have nothing to do with what the issue is. The issue is that they've created this fictitious trust by which they've been converting the inheritances of the people into this private corporate entity style as the United States Corporation Company that has been presented to the world as if it's the country, and the people have been unawares and naive with taxes and everything else and have been submitting to them, and then their position is that the people have been slaves by consent, that they've been consenting to this, when the real deal is they've been deceived. And this is where you get the deception of the Constitution for the United States, distinguished from the contemporary misprision concept of the Constitution of the United States, implying the country or the republic, when in fact it's a democracy platform for slavery, organized and administrated accordingly. That's what the coup of 1861 is. That's what the Act of 1871 is. Therefore, any instruments or processes coming out from under them that implies that you're being liberated from that is a fraud, because the whole foundation is based in creating administrative operations for what you call slavery. Go ahead. Any other questions?
Yeah, so my next question is so you know how they say that gold and silver is the ultimate currency exchange? And
no, gold and silver is not ultimate currency. Is currency money?
Is currency money?
And why do you ask me like that?
Right. All right. So I guess.
No, I didn't answer that. No, let's get in the real world.
Right.
What happens in the ring if you're in the boxing ring and you put your left down and you talking about, well, you know, I'm supposed to hold my hand up, but you think I should hold my hand up, really? No, you got black eye already.
Right.
No, currency is not money. That's your answer.
So
no, stop. Back up. What is money according to law?
According to law?
Well, are we talking law?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
well, what is money?
I mean, what is it? I can answer that.
You don't answer a question with a question.
I can answer that two ways. So the first way I was saying.
No, you can't answer it two ways. What is money?
Well, I guess I don't know that.
Article 1, Section 10, read.
Of course, that's gold and silver.
No, well, why do you say it then?
Well, because I can say that because
if you're talking about the corporate entity and you're going any other way, you're declared incompetent.
Okay. Well, then you also have the pledge of your faith.
Yeah.
So don't think we can do that with the.
In a common conversation, I can go along with you. But the consciousness that you claim, do you know how quick you get beat up with that?
Of course.
All specific. And it was gold and silver coin is the money.
Right.
No state can do what concerning
can make any
or payment of any debt.
Right.
Can what? A gold or silver coin or payment of debt.
Right.
Now, is that a question mark? Does that go into the dispute that you were saying, or currency, or anything else?
That dispute.
Now you knew what it was,
right?
And you kept speaking of it as if it was an option in the state in your answer. You see, in opposition, you would have lost already. Now understand this. I'm not dismissing our communication, or even where you were intending to go. I'm reminding you, in the real world, the answer is a failure. I can accept it in the real world, the answer is a failure. You know, you can't say 2 and 2 is 4, and then you start beating around the bush in the answer. Well, you know, according to, then according to the numbers, and if you know, and then it could be 5 and 8, and you know, I think that you can't do that. Right. So how much 2 and 2?
Right.
How much 2 and 2?
How much what?
2 plus 2.
4.
What is money?
Gold and silver.
What? Coin.
Gold.
See,
oh, you got that gold coins and silver coins?
I don't know how many times we do.
Right.
See, if we got to go through this, this is what I'm saying. In the real world, you keep losing. You're willingly losing because you know the answer and you keep dancing around it. The answer is what it is. What is lawful money?
Gold and silver.
Gold and silver coins. And no matter how you say it, you start saying other stuff and you just let them off the hook. We keep letting them off the hook. Because your argument, if you yourself lie, you've neutralized your argument.
I read that.
Money, all right, let's do this. Law. Let's do this.
I read that.
Now, hold on. Now this is with the congressional record where Tropicana was speaking. on the House Joint Resolution 192, right?
Right.
Let's go down, hold on. All right, read that paragraph.
Gold, silver?
Well, you can start at this act up there.
This act was instituted and established by transforming and or placing the office of the Secretary of Treasury to that of the Governor of the International Monetary Fund, Public Law 94-564. Page 8, Section HR 13955 reads, in part, the U.S. Secretary of Treasury receives no compensation for representing the United States.
Continue.
Gold and silver were such a powerful money during the founding of the United States of America that the founding fathers declared that only gold or silver coins could be money in America. Since gold and silver coinage were heavy and inconvenient for a lot of transactions, they were stored in banks and plain checks was issued as a money substitute. People traded their coupons as money or currency. Currency is not money, but a money substitute. Redeemable currency must promise to pay a dollar equivalent in gold or silver money. Federal Reserve notes, firms, make no such promises and are not money. A Federal Reserve note is a debt obligation of the federal United States government, not money. The federal United States government and the U.S. Congress were not and have never been authorized by the Constitution for the United States of America to issue currency of any kind, but only lawful money, gold and silver coin. Read that?
Yeah, go ahead.
It is essential that we comprehend this distinction between real money and paper money substitute. One cannot get rich by accumulating money substitutes. One can only get deeper into debt. We the people no longer have any money. Most Americans have not been paid any money for a very long time, perhaps not in their entire life. Now do you comprehend why you feel broke? Now do you understand why you are bankrupt, along with the rest of the country?
Now, remember this is in the congressional records, dropped out on the floor of Congress. So if you want to counter them, you know, by claiming a right, what happens if you call currency money?
You neutralize your claim.
Exactly.
So refer to as fiat?
Okay, what you refer to, you can't refer to as money.
Right.
Fiat.
And now you understand why you can't pay a debt. Now you understand where the discharge comes in, where subsection 95A comes in, because you cannot pay a debt.
So when these utilities are hitting us up?
Exactly. Say again?
When the utilities are hitting us up?
Yeah, all of them are. Because they're statements of account.
So how
they're statements of account issued as bills. Now this is where House Joint Resolution comes in. And this is where when you state it to them, where they keep breaching, because the obligation is theirs. This is where, like when we, sometimes you see different Moors would stamp their statements of account with House Joint Resolution 192. And for a while, they will honor a few, and then people start catching on, then they start breaching it. I mean, they're already obligated, they know they're obligated. Because the use of these instruments can only be used to discharge. This is why when you make alleged payments on so-called mortgages, it's in your contract of the mortgage deed, it will say dedonis, which means it's a gift. You're not really paying, it's a gift. This is why they can foreclose on anybody at any time, because they're never really paying. Because they don't know that it's not money. They're convinced that it's money. They think they're making payments. They're given a gift. And then what happens, the corporate state agencies sign off with them. This is where the CUSIC number comes in. This is where the control of the Sister Q comes in. So they're acting as administrator for you. And they'll send you a bill, a statement of account implying that's a bill but it's really a coupon. Then they'll block you in any process of redeeming the coupon, which actually what should be happening. Therefore, the cure is for the people to get conscious, start rebutting the system. You have to collapse it. And you have to help collapse it. Stop agreeing with the processes that they keep presenting to you with a promise that you're going to get a hold of this QSIC number, which they're going to disallow. You see the point?
Of course.
Yeah.
So well, one thing is, would you suggest that everybody turn their ferns into gold and silver coins?
Oh, on one point, but that ain't really, that is never really it, because, and it's not a justification. The real deal is that no matter how you look at it, any fiat system has to have a backing. Therefore, all of the instruments must be presented for what they really are. They cannot be deceptively presented. So what is happening, the gold and silver certificates are really the checks. And see, what they've done, remove people from it. They made other instruments, calling them the checks, to go get the checks that they've been told is the money, which creates debt. You see the point? So the gold and silver certificates are really checks for the money, which is the gold and silver coins. That's it. That's simple. Once you understand that, you understand all your arguments. And this is, and once you understand this too, you understand the Clearfield Doctrine. Because the Clearfield Doctrine is based on the knowledge of the trust company, knowing this, that this process of indebting the people was designed to indebt us. It's just that they start putting on the middle class Europeans and they ain't having it. You understand? And so now that they're dissolving the middle class Europeans, the Europeans are starting to tell you these truths that Raleigh been telling you for the last 142 years. And for the most part, collectively, for most of the people, this is new information, and it ain't really new at all. Is that we've been asleep and kept asleep by our so-called black leaders. And then being directed to blame the European, and then calling him white man, which means sovereign. And we've been actually maintaining our own slavery with our ignorance, and not knowing that the language that we speak is designed to service the administrative processes that we keep thinking we're trying to get out of. This is why there's no what you call hot scale success rate in UCCs. Including people, you know, do it because of the process, not knowing that they must be in their proper person. The proper person is the true heirs. And the true heirs is African Americans, or what is really Moorish Americans. Anybody else is heir. This is why you see wealthy Europeans and upper middle class Europeans, as they get into economic problems, they're denouncing their U.S. citizenship and going to other countries and nationalizing. They ain't going to other countries and getting those stuff pot still. They nationalize. You got that right. The same thing happened in Germany. When Germany was going down the tubes, did they start following UCCs, or did they nationalize Germany? All right, when Cuba was going down the tubes, did they start following UCCs, or did they nationalize Cuba? Venezuela recently, when the hedge funds operating from Wall Street was being enforced on them, and they was corrupting the people, what happened with them? Was they talking about they control the QSIC number, or did they nationalize Venezuela? Nationalize. Well, what do you think is wrong with us? That we ain't caught on yet? And we keep getting trapped in these diversions where they keep buying time. Get the point where I'm talking about? In other words, I'm coming from another angle to not answer your question again, but to have you look at it and answer it yourself. Because answering it for yourself is also answering it for other people. Because once you understand the component parts, although the question is certainly valid, it doesn't get past anybody. They understand it clearly. But without understanding the component parts, they have a tendency to inject their opinions that if it's not harmonious with the facts, they're immediately wrong. You see? And this is why I keep saying, and it's true, that if people don't know history and law together, they don't know law and they don't know history. Because it goes together. It's no different than somebody trying to win the race because you got a strong leg, but you hopping on one leg with one leg tied up behind you. You know, you talk about you're going to win. But you might against a paraplegic. Most races you ain't going to win. And this is where we get caught into burning energy by design. And that's when I say, you know, we're on a treadmill and they're buying time. They're buying time by keeping us busy in the promises of processes. You understand that they control the outcome. And of course, when you complete the process, which some people do, then they don't honor the vouchers. You know what I mean? And so the real deal is focus on nationalization, focus on making other people conscious that you can make yourself more conscious so that you can communicate this properly to other people and not leave them, you know, in a puff of smoke where they really don't understand this thing. And you do it by giving them solid background in history and law, and they will, in their own mind, start slaying the dragon of ignorance and naivety. As they slay the dragon of naivety and ignorance, the system dies because that's what it feeds off. You see the point? And the only way you get a restoration of the state is that they lose the capacity to administrate it. By the lawful process, when the heir is competent, the states will be reverted to them. Why does it not happen? It's because they're in breach. It's very simple. They're in breach. Now, that's explaining what's going on. Now, what we do with that information, that's, you know, according to us and our organization and activity. But you must identify what the problem is before you can fix it. And you must acknowledge what the problem is. You can't delude yourself because you've gone through the process and then get confused when they don't honor, when you know that your position is right. They know your position is right. But they also know if they honor it, they may as well pack up and go to England. You know, leaving their mansions and everything, so they ain't arguing about what you owe. Even when you're dealing with rights of indigenous people, you know, Part 2, Article 6. You know, where it says, you know, they can't remove the children from the family under any pretext. And yet, even when they're talking this trash, they're in violation of international law. You know, so you can even see again why Obama signed that as soon as he came back in, and why Europeans keep saying he's tearing the country down. No, he's tearing the corporation down.
But what do you think about Executive Order 13603?
With the employment or the so-called justification of what you call slavery, what they're presenting. You already know what that is. That's U.S. corporate citizens. That's why you see Europeans leaving in droves.
Droves?
In large numbers. In other words, because the U.S. citizen is now a liability. Because the U.S. citizen is not what you think it is. See, when we keep giving the U.S. citizen designation legitimacy of nationhood as opposed to members or stockholders of the United States Corporation Company registered in France and in Puerto Rico, there's a psychology of you trying to preserve it as if it's the country when it's being dismantled. The platforms are being dismantled. In other words, people who held the servitude so long is trying to maintain the administrative system that actually holds them to servitude because they keep operating as if it's the country. This is the whole point. Conscience must be clear. Give her the mic.
I just read something here, or not read it, but it was on the news about 2-3 weeks ago, where Puerto Rico is now bankrupt and went under.
Yes.
So, and they were talking about how the United States is based in Puerto Rico, the corporation.
See, now this is diversion. That's another way of saying indirectly, United States Corporation Company went bankrupt.
Yes, bankrupt. It's like now, it's like little dominoes in Atlantic City and, and Michigan and Detroit and California.
Now, so Chicago, in the last year, over 3,000 so-called millionaires left Chicago within a year. What kind of message does it send you if you understand the politics? No, just think that what the average person is not aware of. Chicago, big trading city, right? Last year, so last year was just measuring from 215. Over 3,000 millionaires packed up and left Chicago. How do you think world governments look at that? Even though common people don't pay attention to stuff like that. What does that tell people who really understand economics?
I mean, they're getting out of Dodge.
You got that right twice.
They know that the game is over.
All right, so no,
so
they're expecting,
trying to protect the
this is two things they're expecting. They're expecting a false flag, and they're expecting, not in the too near distant future, a Detroit type situation. Same thing with Philadelphia, with 3 cents an ounce tax on so not so
on all liquids, not just sodas.
Yeah, what's it? An ounce. Again, like we were talking, is to cover the inflation, the hyperinflation that's obviously taking place. Why? Because they can't float any bonds.
$17 an hour for minimum wage. The $17 an hour minimum wage they're trying to put up.
Same thing.
15.
So 17 so-called dollars, the minimum wage is $3.50. That's just buying power.
$1.50.
You know what I mean? And so these are realities that has not dawned on the people yet because they still can't count. You know, because people who don't understand how this thing works thinks that that number on their instruments is its value. You know, the number is on the instrument, but the instrument is not the number. The instrument is for bookkeeping, and by its nature, it's inflation. It's inflammatory. Excuse me. Are we clear?
Well, I said it's an IOU for something they don't have.
No, it's a debt note. This is what's happening. They start off, all the bonds are against the Moorish Empire, or so-called designated African Americans. The administrative platform that was set up to administer this institutionalized slavery is called the 14th Amendment, registered in Delaware Corporation. All right? All the bonds are roughly based in that. As time has passed and they made what you call derivative instruments, all of these instruments create what you call an inflationary effect. It is no different than, like, say for instance, this camera is in your possession, and you give him a stock bond or an instrument for the redemption of this camera, right? Now, and it's serial, because that's how it's protected. So then you create 100 more of those same certificates and sell them to other people, but you never deliver this.
Right.
But so now you got the value. Then you're trying to claim this even from him. And this is exactly what's going on in the real world of economics with the United States Corporation Company, states governments, municipal governments, etc. They've created instruments on top of instruments on the original bonds against the Moorish Empire, African Americans, etc. And the stuff is imploding. What has happened is that the nations of the earth can't control them printing them. What they've done is pulled the platform out from under them by which these things are traded. So now what they're doing, they're creating them and they're trading them amongst themselves, and it's just hypering. It's hypering. It's hypering. And so this is what the 3 cents is. It's an indicator that the doo-doo hasn't hit the fan, it's polka dots on the wall. Now the masses don't get it yet. Do you understand? They will get it shortly as they start getting laid off of their jobs.
Again.
Permanently. And then when they go to withdraw fiat from these accounts that they think is theirs, they Zippo to so little that it won't count. And then it's only a matter of time that it'll dawn on them that they've been played, that they on the treadmill. Then as soon as they start getting arrogant and active, they're already waiting for them with the trash trucks. That's where the vaporization techniques come, with the techniques that they learned from King Alfred, from the studies of the tests that they did in World War II. But this is so they don't have to worry about the bones, the vaporization. That's what King Alfred. Say it again.
Rubber so like green?
Yep, that's what they told him. And then Drew Ali said they're going to try to starve you all out. And he said, that brothers going to come from the east, to aid you. And then Circle 7 closes out saying this is the uniting of Asia. And so these Asiatics, they've got to know that they're Asiatics. Because if they're thinking in third person, they are incapable of recognizing enemies and friends. And of course, the Pope got heat under his butt, so he's telling you bluntly. So he's the head of the Roman Curia. So now that means anybody who's subordinate can't counter him. And the fact that the masses have not been aware of that, notwithstanding. So once you understand that he's the head of the Roman Curia, you already know that all subordinate representatives of the corporate states and the franchisees can't counter what he said, can't counter what he says. That's no different than, like say, the Secretary of State trying to argue with the president. It ain't happening. You can't do it, but it ain't happening. So the Don is speaking, and he's throwing all the corporate entities under the bus. And you know the motivation with the Manchurian families, and notice that these statements are redundant. But if you understand these things, you can see the politics happen right in front of your face. And you know it's, if anything credit that you give them is credit for holding this thing together that keep the people fooled for so long after it's apparently done. It's just that the momentum of the operations has been so big and so vast in world influence that the people don't know, like we talked about earlier, another game in town. Once you understand that foundation, you could pretty much see what's happening, project what's happening, and tell what's happening. Any other comments? Any other comments? All right, it's 10:30. Dr. Naima, would you like to share anything with us? Tonight's key.
Just thank everybody for coming, and thank everybody for tuning in to the YouTube broadcast.
Yes. But anyway, give Dr. Naima a hand for keeping this venue open. And it's one thing that I'm saying in relationship to why we continue to do what we do, even with the sacrifice of personal energy and time. It is because the turnover will not be going to the next generation. So the turnover will be in this generation. You're going to solve it one way or another, or you're going to disappear. Now, your survival and your family survival is predicated on your both spiritual connection to the estate, which means your honor in the estate, because it will determine how much you project yourself. That will be your protective aura, or your ripless garment that they can't rend. Because nature doesn't recognize personal station, she operates absolutely on meritocracy. You know, and so again, like we talked earlier, you know, you're collapsing the straw is your consciousness. Because you can go through every process that they offer you, and at every time that you complete the process, they will breach. Therefore, they must be removed. You understand? And you know, that's why they disarmed you, so that you couldn't do it. But you have Manchurian families and others that are taking care of business. So what you don't know, what you haven't done, you need to know that it doesn't matter if you haven't. It's being done in spite of you. I'm clear. The deal of it is for you to have a consciousness of what's going on. And it's unfortunate to a degree because we have to hit on so many different things to build a concept, and the conversation may not be fluid, you know, subject fluid. But these different landmark principles in both history and law are necessary for you to look at the things in context. Because if you look at it in context, you can pretty much conclude the answers yourself. Although we share answers, that's for people who may not comprehend immediate like you may, but understand that, again, and I can't emphasize it enough, that your greatest path to liberty is to teach someone who does not know. In other words, you are your brother's keeper. All right, peace.